In this footage is a United States Air Force major, a cyber warfare analyst with top-secret clearance. A man professionally trained to calculate every move. He is not just buying garden tools, he is preparing for a mission that was never taught at the academy. While hundreds of volunteers combed the Texas woods looking for his millionaire wife, Andre McDonald coldly compiled a list: an axe, a shovel, trash bags, and gasoline. This is the story of how the coveted American dream turned into a pile of ashes in the backyard of an elite estate. How love transformed into a sense of ownership, and a wife's success became the motive for a brutal murder. But what really happened that night behind the closed doors of the luxurious bathroom? Why did an officer with an impeccable reputation choose a hammer, fire, and an axe instead of calling 911? And most importantly, can what he did be considered self-defense? Today we will dive into an investigation where the truth was buried in a very unusual place, and the killer almost made the world believe in his innocence. Enjoy the video, and let's begin. San Antonio, Texas, the elite gated community of Stone Oak. Here, life flows according to a strict schedule: perfectly manicured lawns, expensive cars, and neighbors who know the value of every minute. For 29-year-old Andreen McDonald, discipline was not just a habit, but a religion. Every morning began the same way. At 5:30, she was already in the gym. At 8 o'clock, she was at her desk in her own office. Andreen was a true rising star in the San Antonio business community, managing the Starlight Homes assisted living network. But on the morning of March 1st, 2019, this well-tuned mechanism failed for the first time. When Andreen did not show up for her workout, her trainer did not attach any importance to it. However, when the workday at the office began without her, a wave of anxiety swept through the employees. Andreen was never late. She was a woman who always kept everything under control. Carol Ganbar, Andreen's close friend and business partner, started calling her phone relentlessly. The only answer was the cold silence of voicemail. Carol knew Andreen too well to write this off as ordinary forgetfulness. Sensing that something irreparable had happened, she picked up Andreen's mother, Maureen Smith, and together they headed to the McDonald family estate on Solitude Cove. The house greeted them with a strange silence. Both of Andreen's cars, her beloved Porsche Macan and a Chevrolet Malibu, were parked in the driveway. Inside, on the kitchen table, lay her car keys and purse. In the modern world, a person might leave the house without an umbrella, but not without a phone, keys, and money. Andreen was gone, but everything that belonged to her remained in place. Searching for her friend, Carol entered the master bedroom. The room looked almost perfect, except for one detail. The carpet seemed too clean, as if it had recently been thoroughly steam cleaned. But a real chill ran down the women's spines when they entered the bathroom. On the light switch, Carol noticed a dark smudge. It looked like a biological trace, a mixture of red liquid and a few hairs. Wasting no time, Carol took out her phone and snapped a photo. She did not yet know that this random snapshot would become one of the main pieces of evidence in a case that would shock the entire state. While Maureen called the sheriff, Carol decided to inspect the backyard. The landscaping of the house was flawless, but amidst this coziness, she saw something alien: a fresh pile of ash on the walkway. A metal element gleamed among the charred remains of fabric. It was a zipper from a blouse Andreen had worn the day before. A question hung in the air. Why would a successful family burn clothes in the backyard of their elite home? At that moment, Andre McDonald, an Air Force major and cyber warfare analyst, pulled up to the estate. His demeanor was strangely calm, almost detached. When the deputy sheriff asked him where Andreen was, Andre provided a version of events that seemed suspicious to the police from the very beginning. He claimed that Andreen suffered from migraines and had likely gone to the Baptist Emergency Hospital. Andre even offered to drive there to check. He returned a short time later and confidently stated that she was there and was being treated. the police acted professionally. One short call to the hospital destroyed the major's story. The administration confirmed. A patient with the last name McDonald was indeed in the system, but it was a completely different person who had nothing to do with Andrean. Later, investigators reviewed the hospital's security camera footage. They saw Andre run into the lobby and ask about his wife. The clerk answered that there was a woman with the last name McDonald in room 3. But instead of rushing to her, Andre just stopped, froze for a moment looking into the void, and quickly ran out of the building without even trying to verify if it was his wife. While Andre tried to explain his mistake, officers looked into the garage. The Chevrolet Malibu was parked there. On the rear of the body, right above the trunk, was a fresh dent, and the tire treads were packed with light-colored gravel, the kind usually found on rural roads, not on the paved streets of an elite neighborhood. It became clear. That night, the car had been somewhere far outside the city. At this point, the situation became obvious to the experienced detectives. There was blood in the house. There were ashes from clothes in the garden. The husband was clearly lying about his wife's whereabouts, and Andrean herself, who never broke her schedule, had disappeared without a trace. When investigators tried to ask Andre direct questions, his calm instantly turned into a deaf defense. The Air Force officer, trained to work with classified data, did what no one expected from him at such a critical moment. He refused to speak without a lawyer. From that moment on, the search for the missing woman turned into a game of cat and mouse, with a man who knew exactly where to look for the answers, but decided to bury them along with the truth. The story of Andre and Andrean McDonald originates far from the luxurious neighborhoods of Texas on the sunny shores of Jamaica. Andrean Nicole Anderson was born on September 23, 1989, in Port Antonio to Paul Anderson and Hyacinth Smith. Her childhood was spent in Portland, where the family lived very modestly, but these very conditions forged her character. Even then, the girl demonstrated remarkable ambition and a thirst for knowledge, earning a degree in marketing from Excelsior Community College. She was a woman who clearly understood her goals and did not stop until she got what she wanted. In May 2009, Andrean, who had just turned 19 at the time, met 30-year-old Andre McDonald. By then, Andre had already emigrated to the United States, graduated from Florida International University with a degree in electrical engineering, and begun a confident career as an officer in the U.S. Air Force. He had returned to his homeland only to attend a relative's funeral, but a chance encounter with a girl 10 years his junior changed everything. For Andrean, the successful aviation captain became the embodiment of the American dream, and for Andre, she was the ideal companion for his future life. By July of that same year, after a whirlwind romance, they officially married in Broward County, Florida. After the wedding, the couple's life turned into a true model of social success and prosperity. Andre was assigned to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, where he served as a cyber warfare analyst in the 426th Network Warfare Squadron. While her husband worked with classified national security data, Andrean was not going to settle for the role of a regular military wife. She graduated with honors from the University of Texas with a bachelor's degree in finance, which allowed her to professionally manage large amounts of capital. The family welcomed a daughter, Elena, who became the center of Andrean's world, and later Andrean's mother, Hyacinth, joined them to help raise the child. It was this combination of Andre's military discipline and Andrean's incredible financial acumen that became the solid foundation of their rapid ascent. In 2012, when Andrean was only 22 years old, the couple took a decisive step. They founded Starlight Homes Assisted Living. It was an elder care business where patients received professional assistance in cozy private homes. At the start, they had only 3 residents in one rented space. However, in a matter of years, under Andrean's energetic leadership, Starlight Homes turned into a thriving empire. According to prosecutor Stephen Speyer, at the peak of their success, they were earning 7-figure sums. In 2019, the couple owned several prestigious locations in San Antonio, and their lifestyle included a luxurious estate in Stone Oak and expensive Porsche and Jaguar cars. However, a price that could not be measured in dollars had to be paid for this brilliant success. For the down payment, Andre took radical steps. He completely liquidated his retirement account of $401,000 and sold his own BMW. Because he was older, had a higher credit score, and essentially financed his wife's education and relocation, Andre began to view Andréenne and the business as his rightful property. He frequently reminded her that without his capital, she would have remained a nobody in Jamaica. Andre felt like a master who had bought the right to total control in this relationship. Andrine, for her part, had a radically different view of the situation. In private messages to friends, she wrote directly that Starlight Homes was her idea, her dream, and it would never have happened without her drive. While Andre was busy with his military service, Andréenne managed the daily operations, worked with patients and staff, and became the public face of the company and a rising star in the local community. She did not feel like a debtor, but rather the architect of their shared prosperity. This deep-seated conflict, the financial capital of the husband versus the intellectual energy of the wife, became the main source of toxic tension. The conflict deepened due to external factors. In 2017, a federal lawsuit was filed against their firm for labor law violations, and later the business accumulated over $46,000 in property tax debts. Despite the external image of a perfect couple, in private messages they constantly argued about who was really the brains of the business. Financial success did not unite them. Instead, it turned into an instrument of manipulation and oppression. When money and power became more important than trust in the McDonald household, the American dream rapidly began to turn to ashes. Behind every perfect facade, secrets often hide that sooner or later rise to the surface. In the case of the McDonald family, these secrets began to manifest themselves not in the form of open quarrels, but through encrypted symbols on the skin and hidden financial records. To outsiders, they remained a successful married couple, but inside the Stone Oak estate, Andre McDonald had already begun his own investigation, where the main suspect was his wife. The cracks in the marriage became apparent back in 2016 when Andre returned home after 6 months of military training in Alabama. Instead of a warm welcome, he was met with coldness. Andréenne sent him a message demanding he not return to their shared home. When he finally entered the house, his attention was drawn to 2 new details on his wife's body: fresh tattoos. On Andréenne's arm appeared an infinity symbol with the letter A inside, and on her wrist, the date 14-3-76. To an outsider's eye, these might just be numbers, but Andre, using his analytical skills, began his own digital hunt. On social media, he found a photograph of Andréenne's former lover from Jamaica, Oben Hall. On Hall's chest proudly sat an identical tattoo with the letter A, and the date on Andréenne's wrist turned out to be his birthday. For Andre, this discovery was a blow to his ego. A man he considered a local gang leader and drug dealer still held his wife's heart. At that time, a divorce was avoided only because Andrine agreed to cover up the tattoos and promised to end contact with Hall, fearing she would lose half of the business into which she had poured her soul. However, the real explosion occurred on February 28, 2019, just hours before Andréenne's disappearance. During a visit to an accountant to file their tax return, Andre accidentally discovered a document that shocked him more than any betrayal. It turned out that Andrine had secretly created a new company called Elena Property Management. The main point was that she had registered the business exclusively in her own name, completely erasing Andre from the ownership structure. In the courtroom, Andre would later state that to him, this meant she was robbing him. He viewed Starlight Homes as his property, since his capital had been the launching pad for its success. Andre was convinced that Andrian was preparing the ground to withdraw all assets and leave for Jamaica to join her lover. His paranoia told him that he was merely a tool used to finance someone else's dream, and now they were trying to throw him overboard. The irony was that under Texas community property laws, Andre was still entitled to half the profits, but his anger could no longer be stopped by rational arguments. The conflict that began in the accountant's office escalated into a fierce argument on the way home. Andre was seething with rage so much that he decided to leave the house and go to a Shell gas station to cool off. But instead of silence, a real digital duel began. In text messages that would later become key prosecution evidence, Andre wrote that everything she did was a scheme, but he was not a fool. Andrian's response was sharp and uncompromising. She stated that if he mentioned Oben one more time, she would file for divorce herself. At that moment, Andre, an Air Force major accustomed to controlling every detail of his life, felt he was losing power. He answered dryly that he did not care if she filed for divorce, adding that she was the one who let Oben into their lives. When Andre returned to the estate around midnight, he expected to see his wife asleep in her room. Instead, Andrian was waiting for him, and she was furious. In the luxurious bedroom, where just a few days ago they had hosted guests for Andre's 40th birthday, the final conversation began, which in a matter of minutes turned into a tragedy. The major announced that the next day he would go to a lawyer to officially end their marriage and split the business in half. But he did not know that this evening would end not with the signing of papers, but with a scream that none of the neighbors ever heard. While San Antonio shuddered from the news of the successful businesswoman's disappearance, the Solitude Cove estate was already under round-the-clock covert surveillance. Bexar County Sheriff's detectives kept a close eye on Andre McDonald. The Air Force officer with top-secret clearance had now become the target of reconnaissance himself. His calm facade began to crack the very next day after his wife's disappearance. A strange trip and a gun store. On March 2nd, 2019, around 2 p.m., undercover operatives noticed Andre pulling out of his garage in his Jaguar. The garage door itself looked damaged, as if it had been hastily knocked off its tracks. An inconspicuous line of police cars trailed behind the major's Jaguar. Andre headed to a gun store. What happened inside made the detectives hold their breath. The major, who usually calculated every step, behaved extremely irrationally. He chose a 9mm Smith & Wesson handgun and a massive amount of ammunition. He paid for the purchase, but at the last moment, as if in a trance, he turned around and simply walked out of the store, leaving both the brand new weapon and his documents on the counter. The police did not wait. As soon as he approached his car, he was tackled to the ground in a rough arrest. Investigators suspected the worst. A man tangled in his own lies could be planning either an escape or a final fatal step against himself. Andre was handed over to the military for a psychiatric evaluation, and the detectives finally obtained a warrant to fully search his property. When forensic experts entered the McDonald's garage, they realized that Andre was preparing for something much more horrifying than just hiding his wife. In the trunks of both elite cars, the Chevrolet Malibu and the Porsche Macan, they found a veritable disposal kit. There lay a brand new shovel, a full-sized axe, a machete, heavy-duty trash bags, work gloves, and 2 red 5-gallon cans filled with gasoline. But the most terrifying discovery awaited them in a regular trash can. Among the household waste lay a torn Lowe's receipt. When detectives pieced it together like a puzzle, they saw a complete list of the tools bought that morning. Next to the receipt, in a white plastic bag, they found a heavy claw hammer. It was dirty, with plant debris and dark stains. A rapid test confirmed it was blood. The laboratory later delivered the final verdict. It was Andrian's DNA. At this point, the missing person case definitively turned into a murder investigation, even though there was still no body. The following months became a trial for the entire San Antonio community. While Andre McDonald made bail and returned to managing his wife's business, hundreds of volunteers went out into the field every weekend. Led by former military man Bobby Green and the Chainbreakers group, they combed every ditch, every ravine, and stream. Detectives focused on the Camp Bullies military base. GPS data showed that on the night of the disappearance, Andre had driven onto the base, even though he had no assignments there. Search teams with dogs and helicopters searched the training grounds for weeks, but the Texas woods kept the secret safe. April brought a ray of hope that quickly faded. In the northwest part of the county, near Highway 211, a random passerby found charred human remains. Sheriff Javier Salazar cautiously expressed hope that it was Andrean, but dental records were ruthless. It was not her. The search had to start from scratch. What was most shocking of all was Andre's own behavior. He never once joined the search. When Andrean's friends asked him why he was just sitting at home, he answered coldly and detachedly. Later in court, when asked about his indifference, the major would utter a shocking phrase. "Why would I participate in that charade? I already knew she was dead. To go out in the field and pretend I was looking for her would just be an extra mockery." These 133 days became a long nightmare for Andrean's family, where every morning began with faith and every evening ended in emptiness. They did not know that Andre had not simply disposed of the body. He had used his analytical skills to hide Andrean where no one dared to look. The truth was waiting for its time under the scorching Texas sun, just 6 miles from their empty home. The truth that Andre McDonald tried so hard to bury was waiting for its time on a private ranch along Specht Road, just 6 miles from the couple's luxurious estate. For 133 days, the Texas sun and wild nature destroyed the evidence, but one coincidence ruined the major's perfect plan. On July 11, 2019, a local farmer, Clifton Klabunda, drove his tractor to the edge of the tree line. He was looking for a cow skull he had seen earlier to use as a decoration for his yard. As he approached the place where the animal's remains lay, he was stopped by a sharp, distinct smell. What he saw in front of the cow skull made him freeze. Among the white animal bones, a human skull clearly stood out. The remains were severely damaged. They had not only been exposed to the elements, but also bore marks of thermal exposure. The police who arrived at the scene called this location Ground Zero, as search teams had previously passed near this area but could not enter the private property. Dental record examinations confirmed what the family feared most. It was Andrean McDonald. This discovery became the final piece of the puzzle for the investigation. In less than 48 hours, Andre McDonald was arrested again, but this time he faced the heaviest charge: first-degree murder. For the next 4 years, Andre McDonald maintained complete silence while under house arrest, awaiting a trial that was repeatedly delayed due to the pandemic. However, 3 days before the hearings began in January 2023, the major's strategy drastically changed. He did something that shocked even his own defense team. Andre called his mother and then Andrean's sister, Cindy Johnson. Cindy put him on speakerphone, and for the first time in years, the family heard the voice of the man who had ruined their lives. "Mom, I'm going to tell you the truth," he said through tears. In this confession, he didn't just admit that Andrean was dead, he detailed his version of the events of that night. For the family, this call was not an act of repentance, but a cold calculation, an attempt to manipulate their feelings and lay the groundwork for his self-defense narrative before the trial. When Andre McDonald took the witness stand in January 2023, a tense silence filled the courtroom. The Air Force officer looked detached, almost devoid of emotion, even when describing the most horrific details. He testified that an argument over Andrean's financial machinations escalated into a physical confrontation in their bedroom. According to Andre, his wife was furious over the divorce talk, cursed him out, and spit in his face. The major claimed his reaction was instinctive. "I grabbed her by the head. Our heads clashed, and I saw blood on her face," he testified. Then, according to his version, Andréan ran into the bathroom, and when she saw her injury in the mirror, she allegedly attacked him with her fists. Here, André's defense used an unusual tactic. They showed a video of Andréan powerlifting and carrying André on her back, trying to convince the jury that she was physically stronger than her husband and that he feared her. André stated that during the struggle he tripped her, and when Andréan fell to the floor, he kicked her twice. "I heard a wheeze, and then I heard Elena's footsteps," he continued. The major claimed he simply went to put his daughter to bed, and when he returned 30 minutes later, Andréan was no longer breathing. When the prosecutor asked why he didn't call 911, André replied with icy calm, "I never thought to call anyone to revive a dead person." But the hardest part of the testimony was the description of the events of the following night. André confessed that after initially leaving the body in the field and burning his wife's clothes in the backyard, he returned to Specht Road. He was armed with gasoline and a heavy yellow claw hammer. He told the jury how he poured fuel over the body and set it on fire, and when the fire died down, he began hitting the remains with the hammer. When prosecutor Stephen Speyer asked why he did it, André replied, "I wanted to hit the person that caused the whole circumstance. I was still angry when I was leaving there." Forensic pathologist Dr. James Feig later noted that the nature of the injuries, a shattered jaw and spinal trauma, did not match the version of a simple trip or random kicks. This indicated much greater force and brutality than what the major was trying to pass off as self-defense. This confession left the courtroom stunned. He did not deny the facts of destroying the body. He only denied the intent to kill, trying to convince the world that a professional military analyst had simply panicked. After 6 days of grueling testimony and reviewing horrific evidence, the fate of Major André MacDonald rested in the hands of 12 jurors. The tension in the Bexar County courtroom was palpable. The prosecution demanded a life sentence for intentional murder, while the defense insisted on the self-defense version that led to a tragic accident. The deliberations lasted for almost 11 hours. At one point, the jury sent a note to the judge stating they were deadlocked. The votes were split evenly, 6-6. Judge Frank Castro was forced to apply the so-called Allen charge, a special instruction urging the minority to reconsider their positions to reach a unanimous decision. Ultimately, after 14 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict that shocked André's family. André MacDonald was found not guilty of first-degree murder, but guilty of manslaughter. The fine legal line lay in the definition of intent. For a murder conviction, prosecutors had to prove that André wanted his wife dead, whereas manslaughter means causing death through negligence or reckless behavior. One of the jurors later explained that André's story about simply pushing his wife and her falling awkwardly seemed sufficient to some to raise reasonable doubt about his intent to kill. During the sentencing phase, Judge Frank Castro did not hide his outrage at the defendant's behavior. He noted that in his entire career, he had rarely seen such a complete lack of remorse and emotion. The judge was particularly struck by the fact that throughout the trial, André indifferently stared at his phone, and only one moment made him come alive, when photographs of his wife's charred bones were shown on the screen. He looked at them with scientific interest rather than pain. Judge Castro handed down the maximum possible sentence for this charge, 20 years in prison. Separately, André pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence, which added another 5 years to be served consecutively. In total, the major received 25 years. An important legal point was that the court recognized André's foot as a special needs girl who had seen her father burn her mother's clothes, wrote, "To André MacDonald, you killed my mother. You took my life and broke my heart. You hurt my feelings, and you will pay for what you did. You will be punished forever." These words from a child became the ultimate verdict on the moral degradation of the officer who tried to portray himself as a victim. Civil justice turned out to be much harsher than criminal justice. In March 2024, Andréne's family won a civil lawsuit against André McDonald. The jury awarded the deceased's mother and daughter an incredible sum of $210 million, $110 million in compensatory and $100 million in punitive damages. This became the largest personal injury verdict in Bexar County history. Although André, being behind bars, is unlikely to ever pay this money, the verdict served two purposes: to symbolically punish the killer for trying to smear Andréne's name during the trial and to block his access to any joint assets or property, transferring everything to their daughter. Today, André McDonald is serving his time in a Texas state prison. His appeal in August 2024 was rejected, and his sentence was upheld. The Starlight Homes business, once a symbol of the couple's success, has closed. Elena remains under the care of her grandmother Maureen, who calls the child the sole meaning of her life and the glue holding their shattered family together. The story of André and Andréne McDonald is not just a tale of jealousy and money. It is a reminder that behind a perfect facade of success, darkness can hide, and the American dream can instantly burn to ashes in a backyard fire if love turns into tyranny. The truth, buried under cow bones, eventually spoke, but its price turned out to be too high for everyone involved in this tragedy. Thank you for watching. Until next time.